don't understand what...
I've never understood the venture debt model or really how it works. I feel like it's a category that doesn't make any sense.
Say more.
I mean,
explain it to people what's happening.
I don't really understand how it makes sense for lenders or for founders, to be honest. I think the whole industry doesn't make any sense. For founders, I don't like it because the money has to be paid back, right? It's debt. So founders take in this venture debt thinking like it's an equity round, but without dilution or with some warrants. And they don't realize, well, wait a second, we got to pay this back in a year or a year and a half out of the next round they do. But that creates an overhang on the next round because the new VCs coming in, they want their money to go into the company, not paying off a bank. So it actually makes the next round less attractive. The other thing about it is that the lender is not getting an equity reward, so they don't want to take equity risk. They may be getting a nice, coupon. They might be getting 9% or something like that, which sounds high for debt, but they're not taking true equity risk in the company. So the last thing they want to do is be your last 6 months of runway, right? They want to be your first 6 months of runway and then get paid off on the back end. And I think a lot of founders think, oh, well, I'll take this money and it'll extend my runway from 18 months to 2 years. But what will happen in that last 6 months is all of a sudden the bank will come to you and say, no. Like you have this or that material adverse condition. It's called a MAC out. And there's all these like terms that founders don't understand because it's highly legalistic covenants. And so
Ratios.
All of a sudden the founders find themselves with a lot less flexibility in that last 6 months to a year. Either a covenant gets triggered that makes them pay back the money immediately, or their business flexibility goes way down because they're consulting with their bank about everything.
All of this is coming home to roost right now. Yeah.
I think it's a terrible deal for founders. And I think that even for the lenders, I mean, I guess I assume that these banks know their business better than I do, but I think that the reason I don't trust it as a category from a lender point of view or from like an investor point of view is that all the data about defaults over the last 5 to 10 years happened in this free-flowing zero interest rate environment. And so the startup mortality rates were artificially low because it was so easy to raise. So yeah, venture debt makes sense in an environment in which founders are generally able to raise the next round and then pay back the venture debt. But let's say that tweet storm you mentioned, Jason, can you bring that back on the screen? I actually think this tweet storm is basically correct. I've referred to on this show before that I think one of the things that built up during this bubble is latent startup mortality. So many startups that should have died from not being able to raise next round lived because they were able to raise money. And what this tweet storm is predicting is that in the second half of 2023 and then 24, you're going to have a huge crunch where all these companies have to go out and raise. They've been waiting. So they're all going to get to the point where their cash is so low, they have to go out and raise. And now all of a sudden they're going to be confronted with the new market conditions.
I wonder how many of them have venture debt as an overhang. And
those ones, yeah. And they're going to find they have less runway than they thought because again, those banks, they are going to try and collect the debt before the startup runs out of money. Not, when it runs out of money.
Catch two falling knives. You basically.
Yeah, exactly. So look, I just wonder, what I don't trust is whether the return models on venture debt that were created over the last 5 to 10 years will be a good predictor of what the returns will be in the next 5, 10 years when a lot of the mortality that should have happened in the past now happens in the future.
Well, I mean, and Sachs, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm also starting to see really gnarly term sheets, people foreclosing on businesses, people offering, like literally had a term sheet come in, like we're going to forgive the last note and take this business over for $1, and everybody gets wiped out. The amount of bad feelings that you have to go through, even if there is a core business, to Freeberg's point earlier, hey, they raised $100 million, but there's a $50 million business in here that people would love to invest in. Who wants to go through the hand wringing, the negotiation, the toxicity of a recap? It's an extremely hard process to go through. Are you going through any recaps right now, Sachs? And what is the approach of the firm in terms of dealing with these kind of situations? Do you even want to start that discussion up, or is it too painful?
Well,
For a new company, not one you're already in.
We're not at the, I don't think for most of our companies, we're at the recap or restructuring stage. I mean, I'm talking about the ones that aren't going well. People still have a fair amount of cash in the bank. And we've been beating the drums for literally
But what about
a year.
new opportunities? A new opportunity comes to you. It's one of these overhang companies that wants to restructure. Would you even engage that, or is it just too hard?
I looked at 7 at the end of last year, and I tried to reprice 3 of them. And every single one was able to get a convert done away from us.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. I mean,
We tried to find a market clearing price for this equity, but nobody wants it, to David's point, because there's too much money on the sideline, and people are willing to give them a lifeline that doesn't force them to come to hard terms with what the reality of the moment is.
yeah, I agree with that. We're not quite there yet. And I think the reason why that tweet you posted got some traction is it's saying, listen, the crunch is going to happen second half of 2023 and 2024. That's where you're going to see the down rounds. That's where you're going to see the restructuring, the recaps, and all the rest of it. And look, I'm sure like every VC firm is going to be a player in that. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of miserable work
This is when you're going to see
founders.
This is when you're going to
VCs.
see people's true colors. When you have to recap a company, and this is when you can
Do you
really
guys
start to
remember
see
how crappy
reality.
it was in 2003 to be here? Remember 2003?
painful.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, I found some. Yeah, there was.
You're lucky to raise $500K on a $3 million.
Oh my God. Like
Can
2004, like what a brutal year.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of that. I think the next 18 months, or let's say the next 2 years, is going to be pretty rough for a lot of companies. And it's just that they didn't cut enough. I mean, we've been beating on the drums for a year for companies to lengthen their runway. And some did to some extent, but many didn't do enough. And they're going to get caught in this crunch. Can we just go to that chart that Brad put out? I think that what a lot of founders don't quite understand still is that things are just never going back to 2021. I think a lot of founders listening to the top of the show where we're talking about inflation's under control, they see the market rally, Facebook's up 25%. They may be thinking, okay, we just have to weather the storm for 6 months or a year, and then everything's back to normal. And I think what's important to understand is that the market did bottom out about a month ago and is up pretty nicely. If you see here, this is the SaaS index. It's the median enterprise value divided by next 12 months revenue. And it was really beaten down about at the end of the year, at the end of last year, coming into this year, it was like 4 to 5x multiples of next 12 months revenue for SaaS companies. That's all the way up to 6.1 now. So you're talking about 20 to 50% rally for a lot of companies, which is huge. We're still below the long-term median, which is just under 8. Okay. But what people need to understand is that even if we revert all the way to the mean of 8, which I think at some point we will, that's still well